Power. Yep, recording in progress. Both wonderful women were part of last year's panel, and they just had so much to share. We wanted to bring them back and just have them continue to deepen our awareness, but also provide some really tangible tools for our students and families and possibly ourselves that are experiencing instability. So once again, good morning. You have the ability to speak. We don't see your video. I will manage the chat if you have questions, but Kara is very informal. And so please, if there's kind of dialogue, let's let that flow. That's some great energy. And if you will go ahead in the chat, you know the drill. If you'll go ahead in the chat and put your contact information in there, that would start us off. And I will start us off with, how do you say that you've had a rough morning without saying that you've had a rough morning? Can you see how big this coffee mug is? We woke up to no electricity, but my husband kicked it into gear with pretty short order and got Med Ed out here. So again, we're all going through things, and it's the little stuff that just you got to laugh at. So once again, good morning. If you're on the wrong flight, as the flight attendants might say, know that our goal, our destination is just understanding a little bit more how and why our students and their families experience homelessness in York County, and what we can do to best support them and walk along in this journey so that we're taking care of ourselves as well. So the theme is kind of, we're all under construction, and we're acknowledging that our world has fallen apart to a certain extent, but together we can rebuild and be stronger for it. So again, I'd like to welcome Kara this morning. First off, she's a social worker within the school system and also has her own private practice as a therapist. She has such a strong belief in resiliency, and that people absolutely should be empowered to find their own best solutions. So this morning, I'd like to start us off with Kara Wojcik, a wonderful support system within York County.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. And I think when we talk about homelessness, I think that sometimes in our own lenses, we may fall short and say, or maybe when we were younger, we'd say, oh my gosh, that would never happen to me, or I can't believe that happened. Or we just talk about the different thoughts we have when we hear the idea of homelessness. And when you come to a talk by me, I hope that sometimes you leave really kind of thinking about yourself and your reaction and your reflection. My clients will say to me, Kara, you're different than the other therapists. And I hope that means that I made you think and I made you work. And so this isn't going to be just learning about people who are homeless. This is more going to be about our response and kind of our reaction to people who are homeless. I feel that we're all maybe 3 decisions away from maybe being bankrupt, maybe being homeless, and maybe not, but some are. And so for us to sit here and say that would never happen to us, we just really don't know. And I feel strongly that we're all called to minister to the underprivileged and the least among us. And so hopefully you will take something away. It will just maybe make you think, what do I think when I walk by that homeless person in New York City? Do I get nervous? Do I get scared? Do I keep my kids close to me? How do I respond to the least among us? And so we know that homelessness is lacking stable and adequate housing. And it's also being on the street between shelters, or sometimes, we're going to talk about this, it's simply unsafe to live at home. There's many different things that have brought us to this place. And right now, the world is very chaotic and hectic, and everything is sped up, okay? And so because of that, we're just going and going and going in this fast pace, and COVID slowed us down, and now we're feeling like we have to catch up. But you know what also is catching up? Anxiety and stress and hopelessness and addiction and violence and homelessness and all of these things. And many of us felt like we were on pretty solid footing, and then we're not. And that's what happens with homelessness, is something can change like that. Some of us came from homes where if something would happen, we have family members that we can contact. Some of us came from, we don't have that. We don't have that privilege of having those financial resources. And again, could this happen to anyone? And I would say yes. And so what are some of the stigma? Homeless people are always mentally ill. I would say false. And again, aren't we all kind of a little bit mentally ill? Do we not all suffer with mental illness? But in this terms, homeless people are crazy. Homeless people are nuts. Homeless people are ill. Homeless people are scary. I want to say homeless people could be your neighbors. Homeless people could be you. Homeless people are who you go to church with. So let's really kind of dial back on some of the stigmas. And I'm not assuming that anyone in this group has this, but just sometimes society as a whole, we have these beliefs about what a homeless person really is. Homeless individuals and families made bad choices to create this situation. Oh, I saw them. They were out at the casino. Oh, did you see what happened? They spent all their money on alcohol. And again, we'll talk about this a lot, this shame, blame lens. We're a really big shame, blame society. And what is the story we say when we see someone that's homeless? We automatically think, man, they made those really bad choices. I would never make those choices. So just being aware of the lens that we have when we think about why people are homeless. Homeless people are drug addicts. Again, my practice is full of people who have addiction, because many of us struggle with that, and it has nothing to do with being homeless. There's a lot of people are addicted to marijuana right now. A lot of people are drinking alcohol. A lot of people are addicted to opioids. As we said, the world is tough and hard. So this idea that people who are standing on the street corner just want money for their addiction, I'm going to tell you right now, there's addiction happening everywhere. And we cannot say that homeless people are drug addicts. That is unfair, and it's essentially inaccurate. And so again, I remember there was a story, and there was a girl who was walking on the side of the road, and she was hit by a car and she died. And it was a horrible story of a high schooler. And I remember people saying, what was she doing walking late at night? Did her parents know she was there? And again, we go to that shame, blame place instead of saying, oh my gosh, that is so sad. That is so hard. We want to blame and we want to shame, and we don't want to understand what's really going on. Shame and blame should have no place in our body, mind, and spirit. And we are all human, and we all have ego. And the ego is that place that just judges right away, right? So I see that person standing on the street corner asking me for money, and I automatically think this bad thing. Okay, where did I learn the messaging from that? Have I had a lot of experience? Have I actually gone and sat down at a homeless shelter? And again, also this assumption that anyone who's homeless is living on the streets. As we're going to talk about, there are a lot of people who are doubled up, who are living from couch to couch. It's not always just living under a bridge or in a homeless shelter. Often it's people living in our communities that we have no idea that they're really struggling. And so words are powerful if used correctly. Words are powerful tools if used correctly, and being mindful of how we talk about people who are struggling. And so we know that we want to use a trauma-informed lens. So instead of saying, what is wrong with that person? Oh my gosh, did you see what she did? They don't have any money and she's buying a new cell phone. She always gets her nails done, but she can't pay her rent. I saw her in the WIC line, but yet she has a brand new TV. Instead of saying, what's wrong with you? We know with the trauma lens, we switch it to, what happened? What happened to that person that they got to that place? Are you okay? Do you want to talk? What's wrong with you is shame and blame. What's wrong with you that you keep making bad choices? You couldn't pay your bills last month, and now you're spending money on this. You're not going to be able to pay it this month. Shame, blame, shame, blame. We switch it, we dial back, and we say, what happened? What happened? This person never learned how to save money. What happened that no one ever taught that you have to pay your credit card on a monthly basis? I remember when I was in college, I went and got my first credit card and I was really excited. And they told me, you should never pay this off. What? I mean, so I remember telling my parents, and I said, oh yeah, I went and got my first credit card, and they told me I should never pay it off. And they said, Kara, that's wrong. That's inaccurate, right? Think about credit card debt and how easy that is to come by. Had I not had parents to teach me that was wrong, I mean, these were the people working at the bank in authority who were telling me inaccurate information, right? And maybe they were trying to help me with my credit, but the message I took was, I don't need to pay it off. It's okay. So not all of us have those same opportunities and that education to really understand how our decisions are affected by our choices. And so we know we need to silence the shame. What lens do you use when you see others struggling? Think about that. When you are seeing someone else struggling, do you go to that shame, blame lens? Is it okay to ask for help? Should you be able to do everything on your own? And this idea that it's okay to not be okay. I talk to a lot of my clients about this idea of accepting help because I think the ego gets in the way. And so again, today we're not only talking about the homeless population, but just anyone in general. If we all assume that any of us could really be at that spot at any point. And Brene Brown, who's one of my favorite shame researchers, actually talks about this idea about people having a hard time receiving help. And my clients will say, oh, I can't receive help. And I say, well, you give it. They're like, yes, I always give it. But I don't know, I just feel guilty or I feel bad receiving help. It's okay if they receive help. See, they really need it. They're homeless. I don't need help. And Brene Brown says in this article, it's a really good article, when you attach a negative value to receiving help, so when you judge the idea of receiving help, then you're really assigning value when you offer it. If you cannot receive help without judging yourself, then in some deep way, you are judging other people when you offer it. I was sitting with the client a couple of months ago, and she said she was struggling financially, and she had a newborn, and she told her husband, and this was probably a middle-class family, and she told her husband they were struggling. And so he went to the local food bank to get formula. And when he came back, she said she felt guilty because we don't need it. There are people that need that more. We're not the kind of people that need that. We need to save it. And he said, well, it was there and it was free and it was going to get thrown away and we're struggling. So even just that idea that we have about it's okay for them to accept help, but it's not okay for me to accept help. You see, when that's your lens, you're almost putting yourself above them. And you might say, no, Kara, that's not it. I have more resources. But again, that doesn't, sometimes there's this privilege piece that comes from knowing that I have more resources, but that doesn't mean that I can't also accept help. So be aware of your thoughts about others that receive help, because if you judge yourself for receiving help, then inadvertently, and I know this is deep, and maybe you're thinking, do you judge others when they accept help? Which brings back that shame, blame lens. And so sometimes these people who can't pay their bills and they're struggling and they're doing all these things. So I see them with a brand new cell phone and I see them with the new shoes. And did you see that family? They were driving a Lexus. I heard a story once that it was Christmas time at a school and families were coming because they were picking up their gifts. And I heard this story that the secretaries were commenting on somebody, what they were driving when they were picking up the gifts. And they said, oh, they drive a Lexus. Come on. They don't really need these gifts. Okay. Then I heard later that this family had put all of their money into the Lexus because that's what the man used for a job. And what if they lived in the Lexus? You see, we can't judge the outside without knowing the inside. And is it okay for them to drive a Lexus? Are we putting our values on them and their worth? So just being aware that because a family bought a new cell phone and maybe wasn't able to pay their bills, instead of saying, what's wrong with them? That's so stupid. Their kid doesn't need a cell phone. They need to pay their bills. Again, that is our lens. When we know better, we do better. Is there a way for education rather than shame, blame, and judgment? And so we know that today's youth are struggling, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but today's homeless youth have so much going on, and many youth have already experienced trauma at some point in their life. And we know that trauma affects your brain. And we know that trauma causes the brain to stay in this state of hypervigilance, and you can't really ever relax. And so these youth who are coming to school who are doubled up or homeless, so doubled up means I'm because an event happened and I'm no longer able to live at this residence. So many of us are living with our grandparents, with our aunts and uncles, with our pastors. Maybe we're sharing a space and we can't really ever relax. And trauma affects your memory, affects your relationships. And so these youth are coming to school and they're not really wanting to engage because who knows how long you're actually going to be there. They often can't be a part of a sports team because they don't have a ride home, or maybe they live somewhere where the activity bus doesn't go, or the activity bus only runs at this time and they don't have a way to get them at this time. And schools do an awesome and amazing job. School social workers and counselors and teachers do an awesome job of meeting their needs, but there's still a lot going on with the trauma from being homeless. And you don't get to go to activities and you don't make those relationships. And so there's a lot of trauma that really affects today's homeless youth. Unaccompanied youth is kind of when I used to work in the schools, so I worked for Southeastern School District for 7 years. And before that, I was a school social worker in Kansas City, Missouri. And this idea of unaccompanied youth is a youth that chooses to leave their house for many different reasons. And I've sat at the table where people will say, oh, they're just leaving because they don't want to follow the rules. And this unaccompanied youth law means that, oh, I can just go live with my neighbor because I didn't like what was for dinner. I'm going to tell you right now that is very, very few and far between. These are some of the reasons that I have heard, and these names have been changed, of why some youth choose to be unaccompanied. John is gay, and his parents told him he was unwelcome and he had to leave. Is he entitled? This idea that homeless youth are entitled and they just want to do whatever they want. He's gay and his parents told him he had to leave. Paige, whose mom's boyfriend told her mother, so Paige's mom's boyfriend told her mother she had a choice between Paige and herself. Paige's mom chose her boyfriend. Is Paige entitled? What about Derek, who chose to leave the abuse that he would receive from his dad when he came home drunk? Is he entitled? I remember I had a kid say to me, Miss Wojcik, I wish that I had parents that cared if I came home. I wish that I had a curfew. I wish that I cared enough to have someone have the 360 on me. A lot of the kids don't like this life 360 and it drives them nuts that their parents are wanting to know where they are at all times. They said, Miss Wojcik, I wish that I had someone to have life 360, someone who cared enough about me to want to know where I was at. These unaccompanied youth are making choices for their safety. And sometimes you have to choose yourself over your family. I can't imagine being 18 or 17 and because of my sexuality or because of the abuse in my home, I have to choose to live somewhere else. And then maybe that means I have to shower at school. And maybe that means I'm relying on these resources. And I'm so grateful for these resources. But this is a choice that these youth should not have to make. And I'm grateful for the schools and the community resources, which are protective factors in the lives of these youth. And so, is this generation lazy and self-entitled? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. And some of these students are some of the most resourceful students I have ever met. Because if I'm homeless, I'm using my resources and I'm using my resiliency, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to find that school counselor and I'm going to know their name and I'm going to know where the food pantry is. And some of these students are accessing their resources without ego, without shame, that some of our other students are unable to do. What does homeless look like and feel like? What if I told you that both of these men could be walking in homeless shoes? Again, we don't really know what's going on. And we don't really take the time to listen and hear. And you say, well, Kara, I'm just so worried about myself right now. I don't have time. And I get that. But we have to be aware of the lens that we are using when we're seeing people and their clothes. Things are not always as they seem. And so I want to talk briefly about the mental health issues facing today's housed youth and unhoused youth. Depression, anxiety, perfectionism. We're living in this world of not good enough. One of the things that's really been on the rise since COVID is eating disorders. And I would say that homeless youth are definitely in the same category. This idea of control and feeling like I don't have any control. And so one thing I can control is my weight. And I have a lot of teenagers say to me, hey, Kara or Miss V, I just don't feel hungry. And when you go to cafeterias in middle school and high school, many students are not eating. And they say, I just don't feel hungry. And I had a friend say this, a therapist friend, and I really like this. They said, hunger is an emotion. And if you're not feeling hunger, what other emotions are you also shutting off? We know that we live in this world of not good enough. We know that a lot of self-worth is based on achievement. And I'm only good enough if I'm achieving. And sometimes our youth are unable to achieve for whatever reason. Sometimes it's because of income or opportunities. And so if I'm only good enough when I'm achieving, what happens when I'm not achieving? When I have anyone come into my office, I ask the big three and ask yourself these same questions. Am I skinny enough? Am I pretty enough? Am I good enough? I would say 85% of adults and youth that are coming into my office are saying no to all three of those. And the way I feel about myself is my GPS for the world. And so if I don't think that I'm good enough, and then I live in a home where I'm not accepted and loved, or then I'm living in a home where there's active addiction, what does that say about me? Why are the people in my life treating me like that? And so we try to teach and empower resiliency skills. It's okay to ask for help, advocating for yourself, forming strong relationships with people you can trust. We know that in schools, one relationship with a trusted adult is a protective factor. That means that one relationship with an adult can save their life. And we know that we don't want to feel bad for these kids. We don't want to say, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for you. Because when I say I feel bad, first of all, then that means I feel guilty and I caused it. I feel sad for these kids, but I'm not going to say that to them. I'm going to say things like, hey, Melissa, I know that life is really hard right now. And I know that some of the decisions that are being made for you, they suck and they're not fair. But Melissa, I have seen you show up and go to tutoring in the mornings. Hey, Melissa, I have seen you ask for help. I have seen you accept that shirt that you did, that free shirt that you maybe didn't want to accept so that you could go on the trip. Hey, Melissa, I know that you can do hard things. What is the message that we are reinforcing to these students and ourselves about the struggle? Do they start going on the spiral of nothing ever works out? I'm not going to be okay. Life is not fair. Everyone else has it easier. Or is it, I know that I can do hard things? I'll tell you what, I love right now that there is this push for thrifting. So it's like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? Oh, I'm going thrifting. I love that because it takes away the socioeconomic divide. Because it used to be when I was in school, we didn't have a lot of money. And I remember my friends would go to Limited 2. I don't know if any, I'm dating myself. And they would come in with their Limited 2 sweatshirts. And I remember we couldn't afford that. And I remember kind of feeling not as good, which is so I love that the world we're living in is it's kind of like the less money you spend in the thrift store, the cooler you are. I love that. And so I really want you to think about this. Those of you who are working in schools or working with youth, who are the at-risk kids? I think that 10 years ago, we would say, oh, the homeless kids are at risk. And there's a lot of research about ACEs, right? Which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. So a lot of us who have experienced trauma. But I'm going to tell you, I'm really worried with the kid who's doing cyber school and is afraid to leave his bedroom and doesn't have any friends except for his online friends because of his social anxiety. And I'm going to tell you that I'm really worried about the kid who has the overprotective parent who goes and calls the principal every time their kid acts out, who changes classes every time they don't get a good grade. I am way more worried about those kids than some of my homeless kids, because my homeless kids know how to ask for help. They know how to access resources. They know they can get through hard things. Some of these other kids, because I see them in my practice, their parents are coming to me and they're like, Kara, how do I get my 21-year-old off my couch? They never had a job. They've never been held accountable. And some of our homeless kids have had to work their whole lives, or they've been held accountable because they were an important part of keeping their brother or sibling fed. So I really think we have to start changing the conversation of who are the at-risk kids. And before I pass it over to Dawn, I want to say one more thing. I read something on Facebook about Santa Claus, and it kind of, I think, applied to this talk. This idea that everyone sits on Santa's lap, right? And no matter your socioeconomic status, and you tell Santa what you want. Well, in families where they have the ability to come through, that's great. So I sit on Santa's lap and I say, I want an iPhone. And little Kara is 15 and opens his iPhone. But then John says that he wants an iPhone and his mom can't afford it. And so what message does that send to John? That you weren't a good boy, because if you were a good boy, Santa would come through. And what message does that send to John's mom, who feels that she's not good enough, that she's inadequate because she can't provide? And there was this push, and it said, have your big gifts be from yourselves and have the Santa gifts be smaller. And I thought, man, that would be so cool as a culture to make that shift. So that when the kids are coming back to school and they're sitting around in their first or second grade classrooms and they're saying what they got for Christmas and they're saying their Santa gifts, one doesn't say I got a remote control car and one doesn't say that I got socks. Are there things that we as a community can do to uphold the worth of all persons? Because I think that really is the goal, and to say, this is something that I can do to help us all feel like we matter. Dawn, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you at this time.
Great. Thank you so much, Kara. I'm just struck, when we think about all of the messages that we are sent from the time that we start entering into community, whatever that community is to you, all of these internal and external messages that just start to whisper in our ear, start to maybe even be shouted at us, and how they frame that lens that you were so awesome in sharing. But just in this whole Santa conversation, it's those little things that mean a lot. And would we love for everyone to feel so valued and secure and anchored that something like Santa or whatever holiday your family might be celebrating would be used only as a moment of joy and celebration and not judgment? But you've really sparked something for me this morning with thinking in terms of those messages that as a child are so emotional that they may not even have the vocabulary to express, but man, they're feeling it. And then that feeling grows as time progresses. And so again, it might even sound silly to talk about Santa in terms of emotional intelligence, but I think those kinds of things can be great ways just to start a conversation with those that are around us. And have you ever considered ... what this could mean? So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing so many other pieces that all come together. And I don't want to use a trite analogy of a puzzle, but we really are. We all fit together. We all impact each other. I'm looking at the chat. Just some people resonating with that. You do have the ability to unmute yourselves. You have an opportunity to interact with Kara. Any questions, insights, light bulb moments that you've had this morning? we have a great group here this morning. We have almost 40 people as participants. And I know that Kara's energy and passion for helping to support our community is pretty amazing. Any insights that anyone wants to share, or as I said, kind of a light bulb moment? Okay, you are a quiet group. I am really shocked. Do I need to do something? If somebody wants to speak and you're not able to unmute yourself, let me know in the chat. No. Okay.
I'll say something if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Kara, I appreciated everything that you said. It took me back 35 years. I was one of those homeless youth in high school. And so what people don't realize what that individual may be going through, you hit the nail on the head. And I know, yes, that was 35 years ago, but you know, a lot of my story is still relevant today. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just for a minute. And I'll put this in the chat. Can you see the website that we kind of use as our digital program for the week? Kara, are you able to see that? Awesome. Okay. So I will go ahead and I will put this link in the chat to everyone. We will, when you click on the agenda, we will upload the videos from today and Thursday. You have some resources here. You can click on this. If you would like to order the toolkit that we've prepared for the week, we'll get those out to you. We delivered some of those last week, but we'll get those out to you. They have a lot of some posters, some pocket guides, contact information for Ekia, for Sonia and Missy over at the Education for Children and Youth Experiencing Homelessness. And then on Thursday, when we kind of do our virtual resource fair, you'll also have this information that's on the website as well. So I'm going to stop sharing, and we're gonna remain flexible here. Joyce, do you feel comfortable? It's 11:30. If we could just start to flow into your talk with us, and we will play with the video. We're gonna fingers crossed that the video you want to share will upload. I don't feel like we need to take a break. I feel like we've got good momentum, and maybe we give you guys a good half hour of your lives back after we get done. But please know that if you have something you want to ask, go ahead and pop it up in the chat, or just unmute yourselves and ask. We're family by now. We've worked with Kara. We're feeling like community and connected. So Joyce is sharing her screen. Joyce Santiago goes beyond description in my world. She is such an amazing community advocate. We moved to York about 14 years ago, and I got to know Joyce through the school system. Our kids went to school together, and from the get-go, her energy and her light and her passion were just so evident. And it has been such an honor and a privilege to see her walk in this world and see her professional just trajectory as she serves the York community, and as the rebranding to Affordable Housing Advocates has really started to anchor. I have to give Joyce and her team so many props, because they are that group of just courageous individuals that walk the walk. And so this morning, Joyce is going to share a little bit about her own just personal journey, but most importantly, how do we empower our community members to create their own best solution when we're talking about housing stability, and how these organizations are there to support. So again, any questions, pop them up in the chat, or respectfully ask. We want this to be okay. Somebody's saying that the link's not working. I will figure that out. And not sure why not, but we'll get that squared away for you. And of course, we will provide the slides and the recordings to those that attended, but I will mute and turn my camera off and figure out what's going on with the link. Thank you so much for joining us, Kara. And thank you so much, Joyce, for finishing us out this morning.
Yep. So hello, everyone. I will apologize in advance. I did lose my voice this weekend and it's slowly coming back. So I'm Joyce Santiago. I'm the Executive Director, President of Affordable Housing Advocates. I'm very honored to be a part of this whole session today. So thank you very much for having me. A little bit of my story as it relates to homelessness is that as a senior in high school, there were some, I won't get too much details, but a lot of personal unrest at home. And so I had to bounce basically to wherever I could lay my head down to get a place to sleep and to get food to eat, you know, during that senior year. And a lot of people didn't realize that, because as a homeless youth, you know, we can be very good in hiding that from the public. Then I remember in 1986, I got lucky and I got fortunate and I got a job with an organization, York Area Development Corporation. I was so excited because I had just got an apartment and I, you know, just got a job and like, yeah, it's great, you know, found out shortly that I was pregnant, was fearful. I had to tell my boss. I thought I was going to lose my job because, you know, women back in the 80s, you know, used to have a lot of trouble, you know, as far as if you're pregnant, you're going to lose your job. So I was very fearful that I was going to be homeless again. And all I could think about at that time was my immediate needs. And that was to have a place to lay my head. You know, I never knew that, you know, here come, well, 2018, that I would end up being executive director of the very same organization. So York Area Development Corporation is Affordable Housing Advocates. And I feel very blessed because, like I said, my goal was housing. You know, where am I going to lay my head? Where am I going to get something to eat? It was never, I'm going to run this housing organization. So just to give you a little bit of information about us, in 2021, York Area Housing Group changed its name to Affordable Housing Advocates, AHA, to reflect the continued effort and commitment to providing quality, affordable housing in our community. Though the name has changed, we've proudly served York County for 50 years. Now through 10 community-based and related organizations, AHA owns, manages, and develops throughout York County. In 50 years, we have developed over 40 homeownership opportunities and rehabbed, constructed over 500 units of safe, quality, affordable rental housing. Today, we continue to manage 356 residential and 4 commercial units. Our mission is to enhance the quality of life in communities by advocating for, creating, and sustaining affordable housing options. I want to show you this video. Hopefully I can do it to give you a visual insight into us. Dawn, do I have sharing capabilities? Do I have to do anything special?
You should. Let's give it a whirl. I'm thinking that because you're able to share your screen.
Okay, let's try this. I'm not the most tech savvy person, so I will admit that in a heartbeat. Can you see my screen?
What I can see is behind you. Yep.
Okay, sweet. Okay.
Woohoo!
So,
It's the little things that make me so happy in life.
I know. I agree.
When I first started, I knew nothing about housing. I was able to learn as I went along, and I became very interested because of the people that I met who used the housing that we provided, and of all types and sizes and shapes, and all with the same story. They really liked the housing. It was very important to them, and I became a really solid advocate of proper housing for all people.
When someone has the security of a home, that increases their stability and actually increases their potential to do even greater things. And that also gives them the opportunity to give back to the community. So home ownership or just the idea of having a place to call home is really important in society and in our hometown.
In our community, this is one of the rare agencies, few agencies that work toward providing much needed housing for the low-income individuals.
When I interview applicants and I get to see the tears of joy and the looks on their faces when I tell them what their rent will be and what their utility cost will be, continues to give me goosebumps. And when they get to move in and we are able to provide them with quality housing and the services that we provide, it's just amazing.
We serve a diverse group of residents in the York community. We have folks that we work with that are the elderly population. We have folks we work with that are on the doorstep of homelessness and everywhere in between. So it's individuals, it's families, and to have a stable home environment for those folks is it's extremely powerful and very, very helpful.
In the world that I came from, there was the compassion doesn't fit into the narrative of market rent, apartment rentals. So it was different to have someone come and say, oh, you know, I'm in such a bad way that I lost my job. Well, guess what? We have a safety net for that in this kind of housing. You're not displacing individuals, because it's heartbreaking to watch someone walk out of their home.
The general impact has been the fact that the organization has plenty of great housing across the county of all kinds, all locations. And it's, as I said, very good housing too. So someone who lives in these units doesn't have to worry about bad landlords or leaky water faucets or whatever it might be. It's just very good housing for people who really need it.
When I go on the home visits and I get to see what their stories actually mean, where they have landlords that won't fix their, hot water heaters, or they don't have any heat, or they have a hole in the ceiling and they have to live like that, it's very disturbing. So the reward of bringing them into the apartments that we have is just, it's a great reward.
We've had many residents that have been with us for many years. When you wake up in the morning knowing that, hey, I have a place to live, I have a place to stay, life may have thrown me this curveball, this circumstance may have come up. Knowing that I have a safe, warm, dry place to live makes us a trusted partner in this community, and that means a lot.
Being in the real estate industry for over 20 years and helping people find their forever home is near and dear to my heart. So this mission really does go in line with my passion. The mission is we enhance the quality of lives by advocating, creating, and sustaining affordable housing options.
And I see AHA as being able to impact change and affect change in our communities. There's certain projects that may not be attractive to the private sector. Well, that's where affordable housing advocates can come in and rehab facilities, put homes back into the housing stock.
Where we've made the most impact is that we've been able to house in excess of 500 individuals on an annual basis for quite a number of years. We're going to experience our 50th birthday, and I'd love to see that 500 number escalate to 1,000.
When I hear what rents are, the need for affordable housing is just so dire. So I would hope that they continue to expand those numbers, create additional housing opportunities, assistance for housing, and to continue to do it in a way that provides self-sufficiency.
The quality of the apartments that we provide and the compassion of the team of being able to go above and beyond of not only being landlords to them, it has made a great impact on the community.
So being an organization that is stable, that's trusted, that has their financials in order, that can deliver on those promises, makes us a trusted partner and helps us make a difference in whatever community you're in, whether it's Hanover, Wellsville, or the city of York.
I think that their ability to grow is going to be the biggest impact. And there's so many more things that this organization is going to be able to do now that we have the foundation in place, now that we have the awesome support staff and we have a great board, and we are also being more recognized in the community. So I think that's going to give us a lot of opportunities in the future.
The committed staff that we have, the passionate staff we have about this issue, they know all about affordable housing. They expand our roles, they expand our knowledge on affordable housing.
I think affordable housing advocates role will be expanding in the next 10 years, expanding both in terms of number of units of housing as well as types of housing. I think the expansion will be in creating a better definition of affordable housing, one that's not driven by subsidies, but one driven by types of housing that people need, who might be just in the workforce and have a need for proper housing. I think that this organization is moving in that direction. I feel very good about whatever I may have done in the past to effectuate that.
I'm hoping to be able to grow with the organization. Don't know if I can give another 36 years of my life, but I am very anxious to see where we are headed.
We have the most extraordinary employees, and I couldn't be happier to work with the group of people, from our board to our employees. It's just a fabulous group, and I'm very thankful to be part of it.
I would say happy 50th. We've done a lot for this community, and there's so much more yet to do. And I'm really honored and thankful that I get to be part of this. And I think I'm one of your greatest supporters. So I really am glad that we get to work together. And here's to another 50 more years.
Okay. I'm hoping you can still see my screen.
We can. Thank you, Joyce.
Cool, thank you. I'm not tech savvy, I'll be honest.
You're doing awesome.
Okay, cool, thank you. So let's see if I can get this going. In the 60s, York went through a lot of racial tension that ultimately resulted in race riots that occurred in the late 60s. Out of all of that, a group of people, the Yorkshireette, got together to discuss the community's needs. And one of the areas of concern is focused on housing. And in fact, our organization was created out of those community discussions. Some of the problems that were documented at that time were high rents, unavailable rental units, lack of leases, repairs not completed in rental units, rats, roaches, fleas, bed bugs, and other health hazards in units, little to no housing code enforcement, fear of landlords when complaining, slumlords, and people not knowing their rights. And as many of you are aware, all of these areas of concern are still relevant today. Just a little bit about redlining. Redlining is the discriminatory practice of denying services, typically financial, to residents of certain areas based on their race or ethnicity. For historical context, in York, redlining enhanced neighborhood segregation and kept Blacks poorer. This only enhanced the documented problem areas as discussed on the previous slide. In addition to all the challenges shown on the slide from 50 years ago, there are still challenges that we're dealing with as it relates to housing. We have diminished inventory of affordable housing stock. Yes, there are new units being created throughout your county, and we're very grateful for that. However, the demand far outweighs the current supply. We have long waiting lists. It could take 6 months to 6 years, sometimes maybe even more, to receive an affordable housing. And that includes housing stock that we have in our own organization. There are cost burden households. So cost burden households pay more than 30% of their income, and severe cost burden pay more than 50% of their income for housing expenses, including rent, mortgage, utilities, and other housing related fees and taxes. Those living cost burden or severely cost burden may have difficulty affording necessities such as food, clothing, transportation, and medical care. And then although employers are now providing higher wages, the increasing costs of food, gasoline, utilities, et cetera, puts families back to or worse than what they were before. COVID-19. So, quality and affordable housing was an issue long before COVID-19 hit the scene. Now it's much worse. Lost wages and other factors have made monthly rents unaffordable, and this impact falls hardest on our most vulnerable populations. That would be minority groups, immigrants, the young, and the elderly. In my opinion, we're in a crisis. We need to build more housing, and we need the financial supports to get it done. And this one, the struggle is real. So one of the questions I received beforehand is what would I say to a family that might be struggling? And so for me, this is a loaded question. There isn't a day in which I don't answer some type of housing related question or give some type of housing related advice. And like any other organization, we share information about what is available, to our knowledge. I'm very upfront about what we have and what we don't have, and what our community's current situation is. The last thing I want to do is give someone false hope. So for the calls that we're mainly receiving, housing is needed yesterday. People don't want to hear what you don't have. So I feel that listening first is always the most beneficial before I share any information. So these three words, resilient, positive, and strength, these are the three words that I would use to describe families that we work with. For whatever reason, hurdles popped up in their path. And although overcoming some of those hurdles have taken some time, they were able to overcome it, excuse me. And so many of us can relate to that. So 4 areas that I see that would help as far as housing stability, and there are many more. But affordable housing, that's a given. If we can't afford the housing that we live in, we ultimately lose it. Quality, healthy housing. Poor housing conditions lead to so many health issues that ultimately affect so many parts of one's life. I can go on all day about that. And then strong landlord-tenant relationships are natural win-win for both parties. You can almost guarantee a long-term positive relationship in those scenarios. And then based on conversations that I have with renters, many are not aware of their rights. And this hurts renters greatly because they don't realize they have a voice. So I want to give a shout out to York County Coalition on Homelessness. There are many organizations in York County that provide or support housing in our area. And so we're grateful for all the efforts that the Coalition on Homelessness does, because they bring together these same organizations, sharing information and taking necessary steps to help alleviate homelessness. So I listed the email, and hopefully I have it right, for the Coalition, because if you want more information on this initiative, I'm sure they will gladly share it with you. And then Dawn, basically that's what I have, unless I figure people would have some questions for me, and I don't mind answering anything that I can answer.
Joyce, we have some questions on just resources for literally for rental properties. And so if we can share some links to resources, and we can email those out to people on how do they actually access. And then I went ahead and put in the chat, and it's actually not the most accurate link. There is another one, and I'm just, oh, it's because my screen, I am so sorry. My screen was not, okay. CPC, if you are able to demonstrate any kind of impact with regards to COVID in the last 18 months, and that can even mean that because your children needed to stay home, your hours were cut back, or you needed to take on additional child care to meet the burden of extra work due to COVID, or so any kind of impact. over the last 18 months. The ERAP program is accessible. I believe a family of 4, your annual income needs to be 68,000 or less. So much more liberal in terms of access than previously. And the CPC is the administrator of that rental assistance program in our area. It's being funded through 2024. It helps out with rent and utilities. If you are a family that is a military family, there are a lot of very supportive programs that are there if you are renting. Unfortunately, and this is kind of that conundrum that happens, if you are dealing with a mortgage, other than forbearance that most of the banks were working with people, mortgage help has not come down the pike yet. We are hearing that it should be, but we have not seen, as of right now, specific programs. So we are directing people to PHFA, Pennsylvania Housing and Finance Agency out of Harrisburg. So again, that's kind of that catch-22. If you had a mortgage and you were caught, the programs were not as substantial as if you were renting. That said, everything takes time. We're looking at probably 8 weeks of processing when you submit those applications, and you need to have all of your documentation. But this is the first time in a long time that a federal program is not just comprehensive, but that they are funding it for the long term, because they absolutely understand the kind of long-term impact that we've all experienced. So that's ERAP being done through CPC. Joyce's organization, we will get some resource links in terms of the properties, as well as the Section 8 vouchers. But again, as Joyce mentioned, for a lot of these programs, there is a waiting list. And that's so we want people stable, so they're not having to kind of fight in the rat race of dealing with trying to get to a new property. It's incredibly challenging, and the application fees are a lot, and it can be tough. So let's see.
If I can add,
Go ahead, Joyce.
if I could add, just in regards to our organization, we have, for most of our major sites, subsidy built in. And our website is ageadvocates.org. If you're looking, or if you have a client that wants to have the Section 8 voucher that you take with you, that's through the York Housing Authority that issues that. We don't have any fees associated with our applications. I just want to throw that out there. And then I do agree with Dawn wholeheartedly. If you have any clients or family members or yourself are dealing with any type of rental needs as far as to pay the rent or utilities, yorkcpc.org for sure. They have the ability to not only take care of past due rent, but rent going forward. And then you are correct, PHFA, they are working on a program for homeowners, and I think they're going for some type of approval stage right now, but something should be coming down the pike soon. So just stay in tune with their website, so that way you could share that information, amongst those,
Yeah, I want to kind of link both of our speakers today when we talk about emotional intelligence within our community. And one of Joyce's team members had shared the look of joy when she shared the cost of rent and utilities with the client. I think if we all just take a deep breath, we can really feel that sense of emotional relief that someone who's able to get into a safe and stable program must feel. And that converse, that absolute constant buzz in somebody's mind and head when they are so fearful and concerned, and rightly so. Is the electricity going to get turned on, turned off? Am I going to see a note posted to the door? Where are my kids going to have to leave school? Like that constant buzz is so exhausting and so wearing away. So when we're working in community, having that lens of compassion and value, and we may not really know Some of us may not really know what it's like to have to sleep in our car, or really not be able to let that key work in a lock. We're very blessed that we walk into our homes, and short of a natural disaster, we have relative certainty that I'm going to put my head on my pillow and I'm going to wake up there the next morning. But that is not the case for so many of our community members. And so if we can just access some of that emotional intelligence and really appreciate the feeling of joy, security, peace that can be offered in our community, if we can work together in a more collaborative manner to be able to offer that to students and families and those that are experiencing a disability, or maybe are older and are on a fixed income. I think that that energy and that community collaboration will go a long way to making York the kind of amazing community we all know it can be and we all want it to be. Okay, so any questions, any comments? Did you find this valuable information? Will you be joining us for Thursday? Can we just take a couple of minutes to connect and share a little bit?
Dawn,
Yes.
This is Wanda.
Hi, Wanda. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I wanted to thank both of the speakers. For those of you who don't know me, and I think a lot of people probably do, I'm a community member, but I'm also an advocate, and I do a lot of volunteer work. I really like what's happening here, and I think, you know, the quest for affordable housing is incredibly difficult in normal times. It's even worse now. And what I'm seeing, and I also want to just put a plug in for CPC, because I was actually referred over to them from Bell Next Door, and they're great. They have all kinds of programs. They do have, for those of you who don't know, they do have programs for tenants so they can know their rights. They have it's an 8-week self-sufficiency course, which I'm taking right now. And basically they walk you through why are you in poverty? What is poverty about? Is it generational? Is it situational? They cover housing, they cover financial, they cover all these things. And then they put the person in contact with a progress coach. So they help you along your journey, and then you get a self-sufficiency coach. So that's all really great. My main thing is I have a voucher right now, and I said in the chat, and I see that other people are having similar issues with clients. It's really hard to get a landlord to even accept these vouchers. You know, I actually had a landlord hang up on me. I called them and I asked them, you know, I'm interested in this apartment, and we don't take vouchers, click. So I'm wondering, is there any advice for how to deal with that? How, you know, where, you know, I'm working with Bell Next. I have housing right now, but it's no longer appropriate for my needs. I've pretty much transitioned out of this program. I need to be into something more independent, because, well, I always was independent, but it's getting to the point now where it's very, very obvious that someone could be using the space that I'm holding in this program, and I'd like to transition into something else. But I'm just wondering if Joyce or anyone has any insight on, you know, what is the situation with these vouchers, because they just don't seem to be accepted many places. And you have time limits and you have waiting lists, and it's just a hot mess.
Thank you, Wanda. I'll let Joyce answer that, and we'll also put some resource information with regards to vouchers as well when we share out after the workshop. Thank you so much, Wanda.
Yep, thank you, Wanda. So the Section 8 bond voucher that Wanda is talking about comes from the York Housing Authority, and yes, there is a struggle in our community right now to get landlords to take the voucher. So I know that if all of you are familiar with the agency Tenfold, I'm not saying they're going to wave the magic wand, but they have a program in-house now where they're trying to work with landlords. And I'm hoping that the relationship that they're able to build with them would get landlords to see that you can take, it's not it's not a bad risk, you know, opening up your building for those with a Section 8 voucher. But landlords have gone through a lot during this whole COVID period, you know, with not getting paid for a good while. And I know, let me just start by saying, I know there are good landlords and there are bad landlords. But for the most part, they suffered. And so for a variety of reasons, they're pulling out and they don't want to be involved. They don't want the rents capped because, you know, you have to, there's a cap for how much you can charge. Or they may not want to or have the resources to get their units in compliance, you know, quality standards for, you know, that the housing authority needs it to be in order to have them as a participating landlord. But there are a lot of other reasons, but I agree with you. It just adds to the crisis. You know, we have to figure this out.
What I'm hearing, Joyce, is that a lot of landlords are struggling with being able to do these repairs, but also they have to wait. Sometimes they wait months for someone to even come out and inspect. Now, I don't know how accurate that is, but those are some of the things that I'm hearing for reasons why the landlord doesn't want to accept the vouchers. And the voucher that I have is actually a emergency voucher, which came out of COVID.
Right.
And that one actually comes with some extra money to pay for security deposits or application fees. But so, you know, some of the, I mean, I even applied somewhere, and I had a neighbor that applied to the same. Well, actually, we applied to State Street Crossing, the new one. They're not really low income. They say that they're for a low income, but you know, we applied, we put, they said, oh, apply, and we did, and we sent our application fee in, and they came back and said, well, you don't qualify because of, you don't meet the income requirements. We're like, okay, but, you know, they are waived for vouchers.
Yeah.
And then they came back with, okay, but we only accept vouchers for 3 and 4 bedrooms. Okay, then why did you take my application
Right.
and my money?
Right.
So, you know, we're having issues with even these complexes that are being built that are beautiful complexes, but are they really serving the people that they say they're going to be serving?
I agree with you 100%.
Yep. And please, if you're not already, and I'm sure you are, you're such a great advocate, Wanda, for yourself and others. Please get with Tenfold. I know that they are really striving to support the York community with 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 meaningful advocacy. And again, Wanda, thank you so much for sharing from an advocate, community advocate standpoint, as well as a personal one. As we're getting ready to wrap up, is there anyone else that has something to offer, insights, question for Joyce or for myself? All right. Well, I hope that we will see everyone on Thursday. We have a really great program of hearing from students directly. We did some videotaping, and we'll be doing some engagement with you guys as the community in response to some of the questions that we talked to students about. And then we'll be doing a virtual resource fair, kind of going through the resources in our community and um, offering the opportunity for you to share as well if there are some things that we don't have listed that we should. So I thank the York County Coalition on Homelessness, Kelly Blitchertass, Allie Smith. They are amazing. They've supported us so well during for years and years and years. And I thank Colleen Igo with the County Systems of Care. She's relentless in helping pull us all together and knit us together effectively. And if I've forgotten to thank people, we have an amazing team that has been that works together all year long. And I'll make sure that we get all of those names and contact information out in a follow-up email. So you're able to reach out to us if you need to. All right. It's tough for me to say goodbye, but I'm going to and give you back 15 minutes of your lives. And I thank you for the great information that you've put in the chat. And we'll see you hopefully on Thursday, and reach out to us if you need anything. Please remember, contact helpline PA211. We're here 24/7 to connect you and as well as to listen. Take care, everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.